Welcome to the Growth Island podcast, and thank you for tuning in again. So, my name is Mads Friis, and I'm the host of the podcast. So, something I don't think about that often is my sight. I kind of take that for granted, and I should be much more grateful for being able to see. But it is extremely important, like what can we actually see, and what about the people that are running into challenges with their eyes? So, for that, I got a really interesting guest on the podcast. He is the founder of the Vision Optimization Summit, which is a summit where he interviews different experts on the eyesight. He is legally blind, and you might be wondering, like, what the hell does that mean? I did as well. We'll talk about that. He is an avid biohacker, so is a guy that I often see in the biohacking scenes, whether it's at the different conferences and so on, that are really digging deep into like what can you actually do to like improve your health and so on, which comes from this deep pain of being legally blind himself. And then he has a movie about his journey about being legally blind and trying to regain his sight and being able to navigate in this world. And then, as he says, he's a citizen scientist, meaning that, well, actually, I'll let him tell a little bit more about that as well. So, Victor Mifsud, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Mads. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Victor, let's just start a bit. Kind of like your story. So you grew up and you could see a bit, or how did that work?
Okay, so when I was a child, around like 6, 7, I was complaining to my mother when I was playing outside that it was very difficult to play outside when it was getting dark. And I didn't understand why I was tripping over things and had difficulty focusing, because of the low light conditions. And I saw these other kids, they were running around, playing perfectly fine. And me, I was having trouble. So I was asking my mom, and I said it was dark. And she's like, it's dark. What do you want to see if it's dark? But I'm like, no, something seems like not right. And it kind of kept going on. I kept tripping over things, and I kept like missing things if I was going to look for certain things. And we went for an appointment, and then it turned out that I have this rare genetic vision condition called retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short. And the symptoms of that are, the first one is night blindness, so very difficult navigating in the dark, and tunnel vision. So it's like a tunneling of the vision. My peripheral vision was fading from the outside inwards. Retinitis pigmentosa can kind of take different forms, so it might affect certain people differently. That's just the nature of how that vision condition works.
How many people have this disease around the world?
It's one in 4,000 people in I think in the States it's 1 in 4,000 people. So that can kind of give you an idea. So that's kind of how it affected me. I mean, I have my central vision, so I can see through that hole in clarity and color. I did used to wear glasses for distance, but I've since used some vision techniques to reduce my myopia, and at the same time, I had my lenses replaced, but that was from a cataract surgery when I was 30. So that's why I'm legally blind. I've been dealing with this condition most of my life. It did progressively worsen when I was 21 or so, which where I lost my driver's license, and that was a pretty hard moment because I was just kind of growing up. I had my own car. I drove to work, and then I went into a routine eye appointment, and I was given this information that my eyes were getting much worse, and that they were going to take my license away. And I was completely devastated by that diagnosis. Is I thought things were okay, things were stable, and it really affected my life. It affected my independence, and I went through a pretty difficult time from a mental health perspective, just dealing with that diagnosis, because I just felt so different, and I was very unsure of the future. Like, what's going to happen? Am I going to go, completely blind? Because the tunnel is supposed to pretty much close out, and that's very difficult to process that information. And I was dealing with other issues as well in regards to mental health, like uh, troubled childhood, and parents challenging me in certain ways, and the traumas that came along with that. So that's kind of how it really started, and that's kind of how I found out about it. And it was quite difficult and challenging to deal with that. And most doctors ended up telling me that there's nothing that I can do about it. So
It's
I
tough
just
to hear when you have something like that. And I think it's been on many of the podcasts where I talk to guests, where there's medical doctors that are like, despite their education and so on, like suddenly just being told there's nothing you can do, whether it's Hashimoto's or Crohn's disease and so on. And doctors just like, you gotta live with it. Don't beat yourself up and don't try all these weird things. But in reality, there actually is a way out, or a better way.
yeah, there is. And I mean, on top of that, I was also dealing with learning difficulties or learning disabilities that were undiagnosed throughout my whole school year, because while I was in school, I felt just like the stupid kid who didn't understand anything. And so there was that as well. So life was just one challenge after another, feeling so different, and not fitting in. And I just thought, like,
So what got you out of that pit hole? Being like having challenges learning, being told that you're losing your vision and you can no longer drive around, being like in a really dark place. Like what pulled you out?
well, when I was 30 years old, like, another failed relationship happened, and like, I lost the job, and I was starting to get cataracts. And I thought, like, this is not going in the right direction. And I was at a very, very, very low point, extremely depressed, anxious, on medications that weren't doing anything, antidepressant medications, anti-anxiety medications, ADD medications that were not helping me at all. And I just hit this point where I felt like I had to try anything, to get out of that situation. And by chance of the universe, I came across this book that one person suggested to me, and then like 3 days later, this other person suggested the same book. So I'm like, oh my god, okay, I gotta check this book out. And the book was Dr. Norman Deutsch. He's a New York Times bestselling author. He wrote this book called The Brain That Changes Itself. It's stories from the frontiers of neuroplasticity. So it's different stories of how neuroplasticity affected, somebody's life in different ways, like getting out of strange issues, whether it was a stroke, severe learning disabilities, vision loss. And there was one story that stood out for me. It was Barbara Aerosmith. She was touted as the woman who changed her brain by using neuroplastic exercises to correct her own learning difficulties. And hearing her story, I was so taken by it, because I felt like she was talking about me.
Mm.
And that was one of them. I ended up exploring that school as an adult, going there and changing my brain using these cognitive exercises for 2 years. I attended the school as an adult at 32, and that was one of them. And at the
Just
same
quickly,
time,
Victor, neuroplasticity. Can you just say a few words if someone never heard about that before, but kind of realize it's something to do with the
yeah,
brain?
yeah, sure. Neuroplasticity. That is basically the brain's ability to change itself. Often we thought that the brain was fixed, in the
Mm.
sense that you were born with the brain that you have, as you develop through, 0 to 7, then all of a sudden it's just, you have that brain for the rest of your life. But that's not the case. Science has now learned that it's possible for the brain to grow new neurons, and it's possible for the brain to change for the better or for the worse. But if you give it the right stimulus, whether these novel cognitive exercises that focus on targeted problem areas of the brain, you can actually strengthen them. So it's quite profound. There's a lot of really interesting science around the power of neuroplasticity. So
I think that's
that was a
another
big.
fascinating subject. Like, how many things that we take for granted is in a specific way. And we're like, we have science, we know this is how things work. And then later on, we discover that was actually not true. Just like when you're talking about the brain, I had a class at Harvard where we learned a lot about the brain as well. And it was like, it used to be as you were saying, that it was fixed. You couldn't change anything. Then we saw research on these taxi drivers in the UK. That was before you had a GPS, and we could see their brain was developed in another way. So we're like, all right, there's two things. Either people that has a brain that's developed much more in that region become taxi drivers, or they develop it, right? And now with more research and more studies, we now know that old truth of like you couldn't change your brain is not a real truth. And I think that's so fascinating also, like when we look at health today, like what are the things that we take for granted and saying like this is how it is, that we're going to be in 10 years saying like, okay, this truth that all the doctors believed in turned out not to be true, right?
Yeah, and to add to that, those other things that I thought that couldn't be changed were my mental health issues that I was dealing with, and that the medications weren't helping me. And the other thing is eyesight. We see with the brain, not with the eye. So if the brain is neuroplastic, then the eyes can change too. And it's all about kind of giving the right environment.
So where are you today in regards to your eyes and the medicine compared to where you were some years ago?
My eyes right now are at their best. I've been working with a behavioral optometrist. I've been, which is pretty much like a holistic optometrist. There's certain techniques that can be used to help facilitate the the healing of the eyes in various different ways. So, and the other thing is with the mental health aspect, where I felt quite stuck, is there's different modalities of healing. Psychedelic therapy is huge, and that played a big role in my healing as well. So again, the brain, like the body, can heal in various different ways, and we often thought that it's not the case, or don't bother trying.
So you're fully off the medicine now after all the anesthesia you've done, or is it still a little bit to keep it at a secure level?
For my eyesight,
Eyesight and also mental health.
oh, I'm not on any medications for my mental health. So I've been off it for about 10 years or so. I've been, working with psychedelics and my, my therapist as well for integration. That's been quite helpful. And yeah, so for my eyesight, I've been, I came across about 7, 8 years ago, I came across this really interesting book called Take Off Your Glasses and See.
Mm.
And it's basically about this modality that existed about 100 years ago, put on by Dr. William Bates, called the Bates Method. And he developed eye exercises and eye relaxation exercises that allow people to overcome various vision challenges. And it's quite profound, and the modalities work. A lot of people think that they have to wear glasses for the rest of their life, but that's not the case. And if you know how, which is quite easy, well, after you understand the concept that the eyes can heal. My situation was a bit more complicated with my genetic retinitis pigmentosa condition. So I ended up finding literature in a few of those books saying that people were successful into reversing or drastically improving retinitis pigmentosa using syntonic light therapy and other vision training. So, after reading that book, Take Off Your Glasses and See, I used to wear glasses, and I tried a lot of these techniques, and I reduced my glasses prescription by over 33%,
Mm.
a good couple of years back.
So,
And
so
that helped.
jumping into that, what are some of the very concrete things that you have seen that works, that we have some science behind, and what are some things that you have from kind of like the intuitive level of understanding the body makes sense that's helped you, and what are some of the more like anecdotal, to be like, we don't have any proof on anything else, but this works for me? And if we start with the scientific part first.
Absolutely, sure. So there's a lot of data showing that light is very important for us to see. The eyes need like a full spectrum light in the eyes. Morning sunrise, which is 42% infrared, is very beneficial for eye health. The red light and infrared light is very, very, very beneficial for the eyes. There's many papers now showing that red light therapy in the eyes can drastically reduce myopia.
And
And
myopia is
myopia is the need for glasses to look at things far away.
okay.
And presbyopia is the opposite. You need glasses to look at things up close.
So in regards to red light, how do we use that? Is it like getting up for every sunrise, or what kind of red light panels, what like spectrum of light is needed? And is it like watching 10 minutes, 20 minutes? Like what do we know works?
Well, it really depends. Again, it's a bit multifaceted, so I'm going to try and see if I can make this easy. I mean, the most optimal thing for the eyes right now is sunrise. I would suggest, because the spectrum of the morning light is very important from an eye health perspective to a circadian biology perspective. So there's a lot of data showing that, the circadian code, that book, the work of Dr. Jack Kruse talks a lot about the importance of circadian rhythm health, even Dr. Andrew Huberman as well. So that's very important. But if there's more complex issues, or if you spend most of your life indoors, there's been this buildup of lack of of light deficiencies, essentially. So it might be more advantageous to work with a light therapy device, in the realms of 630 nanometers, 680 nanometers, and 850. I think those are two types of reds, and then the near infrared. So whether it's an LED, it's, most of the red light panels are LED, which is good because they don't have too much of the heat. You're not going to burn your eyes. So usually it's suggested, depends on how far away or what condition you're dealing with. For example, the studies suggested for my situation, retinitis pigmentosa, where it showed benefit, was about 10 centimeters away from the light unit, just for 30 seconds with your eyes closed, and sort of like swoop from left to right, but just have that light shining, on your face, in the eyes. And again, it's a profound effect. Basically, what it's doing is, all the cells run on mitochondria, and mitochondrial dysfunction is the stem of these most of these issues. So the red light is shown to drastically improve the mitochondria. So thus having that turnaround, allowing the cells to really do their thing. So then you can get into things like color light therapy or syntonic light therapy for the eyes, which is quite beneficial as well. That can be a little more, not necessarily one size fits all, because you might need a color prescription that fits with you as the individual. But there's these types of glasses that one can get. I mean, these are red glasses. Wearing them 10 minutes a day, which again, it's almost like a red light therapy. So there's that similar effect that this has on the eyes, and it can rebalance vision. And then some people really benefit as well from these are green.
Mm-hmm.
So you wear this 10 minutes a day in front of a bright window, and the green is very balancing for the eyes as
So
well. So
both look cool, like a rock star, and you improve your eyes.
Hey, why not?
That's fantastic. Yeah. Is it fine to sit behind a window, or do you need to be out to see the real sun exposure?
I would say outdoors is ideal. Depends on the lux of the lights. I mean, right behind me here is just this massive big window. So in a couple more hours, it's going to be really, really bright and sunny because the sun goes down this way. So yeah, and I mean, again, there's a lot of data on the power of syntonic light therapy, and I do discuss a few case studies by natural vision educators and behavioral optometrists that use these techniques to help, behavior issues, learning issues, and vision issues, because they all actually are tied in. Because again, we see with the brain, so there's this kind of connection going on of just balancing the system.
So light is something we know works. You can take red light and potentially sit with 1 minute closed eyes. That helps. Would you look directly into the red light as well, or would you stay away from that? That's a question I got about red light before as well.
Yeah, well, the thing is, your eyelids are so thin that if you close your eyes, it's still going to penetrate through. And for me, I said 30 seconds, which doesn't seem like a long time, but if you're, see, the thing with LED panels, the further you are away, the less intense, and the closer you are, the more intense. So you don't want to underdo it, and you don't want to overdo it with the red light therapy, especially that close with the eyes. So that's the way the studies were working for my condition specifically. But for people dealing with myopia or presbyopia, or just wants to improve, you could be a bit further back from it, and while you're doing the whole body, just kind of like have it on the face. I always suggest having red lights on if you have to work on it inside anyway, like just having red lights on in general to, again, balance out the spectrum of being indoors. I think that's what we're essentially trying to mimic is just being outdoors all the time. So,
but what about for the eyes? So I think I'm a bit more light sensitive. So when I look into red light, it's really not comfortable for me. So I always close my eyes. But I also know some of my friends are actually like sitting and looking into the red light. Have you seen any data on like the damaging effects, or is it kind of the verdict is still out there? Or would you just always keep your eyes closed because that's kind of the safe thing and you still get a lot of the benefits?
I open my eyes in front of it as well. I actually used to be quite light sensitive. I was the king of collecting sunglasses. I wore sunglasses all of my life. I still started to get cataracts at 30. And then, learning about light spectrums in the eyes and the importance of circadian biology, I just one day just said, I'm not going to wear sunglasses. And eventually my eyes, my light sensitivity just went away. So that might take some time. It also depends on where you are as well. Like, latitude wise, if we're in Toronto versus, going to Mexico, the sun is a heck of a lot stronger, especially, 11 o'clock, noon, 1 o'clock. It's very different from here. I mean, the latitude of some parts of Mexico is 20, and I'm right now in Toronto's, 39 or 40 something. So that's, not all sun is created equally in that sense. It really depends where you are in the world. So, light is powerful, and there's definitely it's hard to be a one size fits all because the power of light is so can be so intense.
Yeah.
And again, skin tone, and that's a whole other thing as well. So
shifting gear a little bit from light, what are other very concrete things that you can do to improve your eyes or that you have used, or that might also be applicable for someone that's wearing glasses and actually want to stop wearing glasses?
well, I often say this: you don't need your glasses as much as you think you do. The other thing too, modern optometry, the way they're designed with like stigmatism compensation. Stigmatism is when your eye is kind of shaped like when your eye is shaped not round but more of like a football, like an American football, I should say. So, and then when people get glasses, they get this stigmatism compensation. So when you look at somebody wearing glasses in the face, if you look at their glasses, you see like through the lens, you see their on the side of their face where their eyes are, it's almost like squished in. Like when you look at somebody with maybe a stronger pair, that's the stigmatism compensation. But what that does is acts like a crutch. So the eyes and the muscle of the eye is essentially holding that stigmatism in place because the eye naturally will want to be round. So if you work with a behavioral optometrist, holistic optometrist, they can actually prescribe you glasses that gets rid of that crutch. So it's always holding your eyes into that place, but the eyes will need to relax. So the shape will become round again. And this can be done through various techniques. Palming technique is probably one of the most famous techniques, which is just taking the palms of your hands and lightly pressing, covering both eyes. And William Bates talked quite a bit about this technique, how that's the key to sight is relaxation. And most people don't realize whether it was built up over time. In the same way that when you're stressed out, going about your day and you don't even realize that you've been clenching your jaw the whole time. Like the same thing happens with these subtle muscles around the eye, because we're just like in this like hyper focused mode and it's like always on. So the body needs to be trained to let go. Vision, natural sight is effortless sight. So yeah.
So what's other things we can do as well? So there's like the red light, getting up, seeing the sunrise, or getting some kind of red light, close eyes, get that light spectrum. There's like holding up our palms in front of our, like giving a little gentle massage.
You wouldn't want to press too hard, but it's more of like holding the eyes to take the strain off the muscles. That can be done for 5 to 10 minutes every day, and people have profound happenings from it. I'd suggest, like I said, if you do have glasses, working with a holistic optometrist, or some people are even ordering glasses online and finding out ways to reduce their diopters to again allow the eyes like a pair of glasses so they can relax a bit. Yeah. So there's that. Trauma, childhood trauma, even ancestral trauma actually does play a big role in vision problems as well. And again, there's a lot of data and science showing the same thing. The body, once it's traumatized and that trauma hasn't been resolved, the body didn't want to see the trauma. So that manifests into, not wanting to see it. So the body blurs it out. So, trauma reduction therapy, whether it's somatic therapy, which is a type of body-mind centric therapy, psychedelic therapy. I mean, ketamine is there's articles coming out showing that ketamine has been shown to really help with common vision issues as well. Ketamine is also being used for traumatic brain injury. So then there's the connection between the eye and the brain. If it's helping the eye, if it's helping the brain, it's helping the eye. So again, there's that connection. But trauma, unresolved trauma, most definitely has a factor into a lot of vision issues.
In regards to ketamine, what's the status on the research on that right now? Because it can have some quite heavy effects, right? Like, is it FDA approved now, or we are like the experimental stage in regards to using it for eyesight and so on? Like, where are we in that spectrum?
In regards to using it for eyesight, I think they still are learning a lot about ketamine. Right now, the two main legal uses of ketamine treatment are for pain and depression. It's the
Mm.
only legal psychedelic to be now run in most parts of North America, U.S. and Canada. There's quite a few clinics legally allowed to function for that. So I can send you that paper on the ketamine and the eyesight if you're interested in seeing that. That came out in a journal.
That would be fantastic. I'll put that in the show notes. I
Sure.
often get questions when there's claims on the podcast and something works. People are like, "All right, you said there's a lot of data, but like, can we see any of the data? Like, do we have any articles that we can look through ourselves and kind of read?" Same as saying like the trauma is related and ancestral trauma is related to eyesight. Like, where are we in regards to papers and understanding of that, or is it more like at the intuitive level that we're like, we see traumas are having an issue in general in the body?
Well, the work of Dr. Gabor Mate has a lot of data showing that. He's this fellow, Dr. Gabor Mate. He's a medical doctor, trauma expert. This book is called When the Body Says No. There's a lot of case studies showing that people who were traumatized, who had unresolved trauma, their trauma ends up manifesting into autoimmune issues, cancer, you name it. And then there's another book that again goes into the science. It's called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. And he himself he started to go blind at 30 and realized, through a lot of his healing journey, he ended up finding that he started to go blind because of an ancestral trauma. So this is a little bit more woo-woo, but he has a lot of science in his book showing individuals in a traumatized state, showing that genes were turning off. So, and again, if you take away the trauma, things can kind of come back. And then there's another book too. I mean, that Dr. Gabor Mate recommended in 2019. This book that just came out. It's called Cured. It's about the life-changing science of spontaneous healing. So there's case studies of people with stage 4 melanoma who were on their deathbed, where they, made some of these life changes, and then they're completely healed, or the cancer just completely disappeared. So how does that happen? But what I think how that happens is basically we put ourselves in this Goldilocks environment where you're in a safe place, you're feeling loved, you're eating well, you're out in the sun, and then all of a sudden these things are in order, and that issue, that symptom, just all of a sudden just disappears. So I mean, there's still more research to that, what's going on, but I really believe that that's essentially is what biohacking is now aiming to do. This look at the inner world from emotional states, etc., to our outer world. What we're eating, our light environment, the quantum environment as well. So if things get balanced, then the body will go into its natural state of healing. So
it's fascinating what's going to come up the next couple of years, or the next 10, 20 years, how we can understand it better. Like, what is traumas? And I heard the whole epigenetics and like ancestral so on. I haven't read those books, but I'm like slightly skeptical still in regards to whether my grandmother is like the trauma she experienced is why I am like, if I have an autoimmune disease and so on. But I'm hearing more and more people talk about it. So who knows, it might be like meditation was 20 years ago. People like, that's absolutely crazy. How could you ever think that just sitting and doing nothing could change your brain, right? People will look at that being like, that's absolutely crazy. And now we have the tools today to actually measure it.
Yeah, one of the best books out there right now on that topic is that Mark Wolin book. It Didn't Start With You, and he goes into a lot of the science. So if that can open your eyes if you check that book out. Very interesting.
Cool. Make sure
And
to
then
put a link in the show notes as well for that, so people can check it out.
for
So
sure,
if someone is sitting and listening saying like, I don't believe it, I would suggest try and check it out. I think that's part of being a scientist as well, is if you hear a claim, if someone provides with some kind of knowledge or pieces to kind of prove it, then that's kind of testing it out and seeing, do you believe in the science or not?
Oh yeah, I mean, question everything, regardless. So I'm a most definite advocate of questioning everything, or it's very important. The other thing I've been finding fascinating, and I really believe it's one of the future elements of medicine is peptides. I've been exploring that quite a bit.
And just a quick word on what peptides is. So we have proteins, and then the smaller parts are peptides, and then we go down to amino acids. Is that correct?
Yes. So, I mean, insulin is probably one of the most famous peptides. But the body is like a peptide creating machine, thyroid, whatever. So the Russians about 40 years ago started developing these peptide bioregulators that target, the brain, pineal gland, the retina, liver. And there's been some, there's really interesting data showing they've had a profound effect on my condition, actually, retinitis pigmentosa, using the retina bioregulator and the brain bioregulator. And there's PubMed studies as well showing that the epitalon peptide can drastically help retinitis pigmentosa, as well as the retinal peptide retinamelin. And now, I mean, in the past year or so, it's been blowing up, the popularity of peptides, whether peptides for immune system like thymosin alpha 1, there's BPC 157, which is a very diverse healing peptide that's actually created naturally in the gastric juices of your stomach, but they've found a way to isolate it, and just an incredible healing peptide for tendon, muscle repair, injury, dopamine regulation, you name it. And that one, Ben Greenfield's talked about it. There's so many people now talking about that one specifically. But there's a lot of them right now, and new ones are being created, and, for the brain, for the eyes. So
it's an interesting area that's developing a lot these days.
Yeah.
And getting a lot of press.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, I was taken by that. And I'm working with some great people who are quite knowledgeable. Dr. Seeds, he was the head of the International Peptide Society. He's been working with me, giving me peptides, prescribed peptides. So I've been working on it for about, working with them for about a year or so. I've been using the Russian bioregulator peptides as well, like the epitalon, like the retinal peptide. And, I started a year and a half ago. So I went to my optometrist and got some markers, some labs showing where my visual fields were at, in this special test. And so I have that. And then a year later, I went back, and my visual fields have been slowly improving. I went back again 2 weeks ago, and there's another change again for the better. I'm currently on my round 3 of my, retina protocol. Every 3 months I do a round of these peptides, and then when I'm not doing those, I do these other ones to help facilitate the immune system and other things. So Yeah, I mean, I have the data in on these visual field reports showing that I have some lab reports from 20 years ago about how my eyes were. I mean, my optometrist said my eyes look much better now than they did 20 years ago.
That's fantastic. Is there
So
any chance you can put some of that together? Victor, I would love to see that as well and share to see so people can see the understanding, or if someone doesn't have the eyesight but can have someone else explain them to like, hey, something is possible. Of course, it might be a different disease and so on.
sure, absolutely, yeah. I mean that was really the purpose of putting together the Vision Optimization Summit, because as you know, and as I've been talking about, there's so many different potential angles that the eyes need to be in that environment that can be looked at. Like I said, trauma, peptides, color light therapy, neuroplasticity.
Remember you talked when we spoke earlier as well about the whole like where do you move your like moving your eyes different directions, actually training the eyes to move around is also part of, can be helpful, like with the right protocols to train the eyes in that way.
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, if you're living an indoor life existence and you're always just looking at your computer, so your eyes are just looking from here to there every day, here to there, here to there. But the eyes need breaks. The eyes need to be blinking a lot. It's very important to blink a lot. And the other thing, it's important if you're staring at your computer, it's getting this foreign, unnatural light signal. So it's so important to look away from your computer. If you're by a window, look far off in the distance so your eyes can be trained to be like, oh yeah, it needs to like look in the distance. Because the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
That it very much happens to the eyes too. So again, I mean, ultimately, everything I'm talking about has just stemmed from us being completely disconnected from nature. So once you kind of get that back and realize that we're connecting on whether it's a quantum level or, why do people feel great when they're on the beach walking barefoot in the sun? Where's that? I mean, obviously you're on vacation, but there's something else different there. Grounded, charging the cells. So yeah, I mean, I'm still learning a lot, and there's just so much interesting information, and we've gone so far, but I'm still learning as well, and growing and healing. But just all this stemmed from my curiosity to just try and get well, because I was not in the best spot, and doctors were telling me stuff that just simply wasn't working anymore.
Victor, time is flying fast. So the question that I always ask my guests as well, if you had to give 1 to 3 final advice to the guest, what could that be?
Final advice
could be something you mentioned before as well.
Yeah, well, I would say that your body is intelligent and it can heal. You just need to believe that and understand the environment that it needs to heal in. You might not be able to see these things with your eyes, but there's a lot of things at play. And get inspired by books, research, question everything, and then magic can happen.
It's beautiful. Victor, where can people find out more about you?
I'm quite active on Instagram at Blind Biohacker. They can also go to visionoptimizationsummit.com and register for the summit. All of the talks are available to watch and learn from. Watch at your own pace. And my documentary film in the States is available on Amazon Prime and iTunes in Canada. In Europe, I have to check where that is.
But otherwise, they can find it on your Instagram.
Yes.
So if you go to Instagram, look at your profile, you have this link as well where you're linking to a lot of the stuff. And then Perfect. Victor, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great talking with you, and hope to see you in real life soon.
Same.
All right. Have a good day.